that you cannot change, and then we will have unordered a unique list of items with sets. Right. Now let's start with the dictionaries. Now so far we discussed two things. Here two things means when we talk about list and dictionaries, we use something called index. We have a numerical value to access each individual value that specify the position of it. Now instead of these numbers in dictionaries, we can use what we call keys. So dictionaries, there will be two parts. We will have key value pairs, right? So you can still access the elements like in list, but using a key, which is very useful. Now especially when you take a data set, for example, if you want to specify columns with numbers, it's very difficult you to remember, isn't it? So you can call by keys, right? We normally call key value pair. Right. Now when you say key value pair, right, in dictionary we can see how to create this one, right? Now with the creation, always you have two parts. You have to specify key and a value. So let me start. Now to do that, I will have the idle session. I will open up a window. So I'll divide into these two parts. First of all, let's look at how to create a dictionary, right? So this is create a dictionary. So creation is with the name for the dictionary. You can use any name with the rules that we have discussed. So I'm going to say number dictionary in short. Usually dictionaries start with curly brackets, and then each row you will have a key and value. Now key means like index. So key, I'm going to use 1, right? And the value is equal in Japanese word. So that's ichi, right? So similarly, we will have the second item 2. In Japanese, it's ni. Then third one 3. In Japanese, it is san. Right. You see how the structure is. You start with the curly brackets. You will have two parts. You have keys and the values. So let me run this. Right. So we'll go to program 29. We are going to have dictionaries. Now once you create this, you will see you can find out number dictionary is available there. You will have 3 key value pairs, and if you look at the type of this, right, it says it's a dictionary. Class is dictionary, right? And you can try len as well, right? And it says there are 3 items inside this dictionary. Now another one is you can simply print everything, like print number dic, which says everything, like exactly it is. We have all the 3 key value pairs. And you can try with the same way that we have used with the other data structures, like you can say now for I in number dict, and you can try printing I. Make a note of this. This will print only keys. It will print only keys. Okay. Now I told you like we have 2 pairs. That means we have keys and values. If you need values, then you have to slightly modify this. We can say number dict dot values. And when you say print I, this time it will print, right, values. If you need both keys and values, there's another way we can print. We can say for I in, we can say items, and we can say print I, which will print as 3 tuples, or the key value pairs represented as the 3 different tuples here. Right. If you have finished up to this point, can you please raise your hands so that I can move to the next part. Okay, so let me run. So we have, yes, we get the class dictionary and 3. Then printing. The first one you can just say print number dict. So this is one way to do. And then print keys. You can say for I in number dict, print I. Yes, if you want to print values, right? And finally print items. Right, now if I print it, so this is the type, this is the length, this is normal print, this is keys, this is values, and this is items. Amila Niroshan, Asela, Harita, Janita, finished. Kalana, Lahiru, Nahil. Now let's look at accessing elements, right? How do you access? Now let's say we want to access the first item. First item, we know key is 1, right? Equivalent value is in Japanese there. So this is how we are going to access it. So if we simply, we can say print number dict, and within brackets you can have the key. So this is to say that, okay, what is the value inside the number dict when the key is 1. it says key. So similarly you can try for 3. You see the point, right? It's more quick question. Now if you want to change the details, now we know, for example, we can add another one. Let's add another one. If you print number dict, we have right now only 3 items. Let's add the 4th one. So this is how you are going to add number dict. You specify the key, that is 4, and then you can have the equivalent term in Japanese, that is yon. Right, now if you print again, you can see there are 4 elements. If you say number dict 4, yes, that's what we are getting. Now let's say you want to change existing value. In Japanese there's another word for 4. Right now we use yon. So another word is called shi. So let's assume that instead of yon, I want to replace it with shi. So this is how we are going to do. We will make an assignment, which means when the value is 4, we can give it the new value. So let me use the term she. So we have added new one, at the same time we have changed it. Right, now if you print again, you can see 4 becomes she. Okay, one last thing, if you want to delete something, simply use the del keyword. Del for delete. So for example, if you want to remove 2 from the keys, you say 2. Again, if you look at now, see 2 is gone. So a few things we have discussed. In dictionaries you can have both keys and value pairs. Then you can, there are 4 ways that you can actually print different part of the math. And then accessing elements also, we look at how to access an item that is there. And we discuss how to add items to the dictionary. And next one, we are going to learn how to remove items. Sometimes goods might expire, so you have to remove them. So here are the list of methods available, and some methods actually I have not discussed in detail, but I assume that with the basic knowledge, you should be able to handle it. Okay, now next thing I want to discuss a very interesting part, that is how to handle strings. Now if you ask me why we need to learn this again, when we represent our data in majority of ways, we have to adhere to sometimes some data items we have to represent as strings. So remember, you should learn how to handle strings. Right. Let's take an example. Let's say we have a variable s and we assign a string containing dialog. So remember, the characters are like a list, right? So if you say what is a string, we can say that it's like a list. So for example, when you say characters dialog, we can indicate index as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. Now this is called forward indexing, right? So this technique is called forward. That is forward. And these minus values are on backwards, right? It comes backwards. For example, let me show you what this means. Now if I take my and if I type s equals dialog. So when you say type s, you see it as a string. When you say print s, there's no issues at all. In list, we know that if you want to individual characters, you can simply say s, for example, not, which will give you d. S1, it's I. S2, so this is how it goes. Likewise, if you want to go to the last one, easiest way is s minus 1. That will give you a last character, x minus 2. Right? You can go from forward side or backward side. Right. Okay, so those who are comfortable up to this point, can you please raise your hands? Okay, you can lower the hands now. Okay, you can lower the hands now. Right. Next, I'm going to introduce the idea of slicing. So like slicing means you are going to access a part of it. So it could be a data, it could be some rental property and so on. So let me talk about how to get a subset of, how to create subset of strings from this. So I'm going to take the right. So we have this. What we have is a dialog. If you say this 0 to 4, This notation, what we are going to learn is we have already seen earlier, which means you specify start, stop and step. So when you say 0 to 4, it will give you 0, 1, 2, 3. 4 you cannot claim because it's not divided. Okay. So when I say 0 to 4, it will capture D, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you left with only G. If you have the first column and the last column, usually you don't have to specify. So you can omit 0, simply you can say colon and 4, which is same answer and same . Right, next one. Can you tell me what is the outcome of this? Can you type in the chat without checking the answer in the Python? We have put 0 to 6. My question is, what is the outcome? So if you go back, 0 to 6 means 0 and the last number should be 5, right? Remember. So it will go from 0 to 5, which means the term dialog. If you enter, you will get everything. But one thing remember, if you have a start and a stop, you don't have to specify it. So simply you can say colon. Right. Can you tell me the outcome of this? This is like online. So everything is online here. So if I go back here, 3 is the starting point. 3 means L, right? This is included. This should go up to 6, that means up to 5. So when you start with 3, then step is 2. 3 plus 2 is 5. So we will get LG. So we will get LG here. So since you have ending, you can remove that. The same thing we can compactly represent 3 colon 2. It's the same as. Right, many of you have actually given me the correct answer. Right, one more. Right, can you guess the outcome of this? So you will get everything, right? 0 to 6. So simply we can say S colon colon because they are already default value. If you finish, please raise your hands. Okay, you can lower the hands now. Okay, let's say I'm going from backward indexing. I'm going to start from here, G, O, L, A, I, G, D. Now if you want to go like this, you have to start with -1. You can have 5 as well, but easiest way -1. And then you have to go up to -7, isn't it? We want to finish it here, -7. So like this. So we can say S -1 to -7. What is the step value? Anyone? How do you get -2? What to add? -1 each. So we can put it like this. So now you can see dialog going from other way around, G, O, L, A, I, D. Right. Another thing I told you, if you have a start and end, you don't have to specify it. So the shortcut for this is with -1. That's all. Okay. If you have understood up to this point, can you please raise your hands? Okay, so I think we have got some idea about handling strings. The same things we will use in coming sessions as handling data sets. Okay. So this is the complete still. I will already share these documents with you. So you can go through and come if you have any doubts. Right. So like in previous case, we can use for loop as well. But the simplest one would be, right, we can say for char in S. That means we will say whatever inside S, we get the pieces. So we can say print char. Right, you can get it like this. Right. If you have finished up to this point, you can still raise your hands. Right. Okay. So with that one, we can come to a very important session where we will look at object-oriented programming. Okay, you can lower the hands now. So object orientation is a very important concept when it comes to different programming paradigms. Different programming languages behave differently, and Python is actually designed such a way that it can be used for both object oriented programs or like the more important ones. Okay, so let's start with object orientation. Right, in object-oriented programming, we see everything as, right, some objects. Okay, right. So when you create an object, normally we call it an instance of a class. And when you want to create the class, we will specify the instance variables. Right. Okay. So now so far we have not thought about anything. The only way that what we learn is we use functions to develop the program. We discussed that functions are very useful to keep track of the detail. Now similarly, object-oriented programming, objects actually one step ahead, which means you are going to keep track of the object world, right? And then you can actually create objects and manipulate objects. So you will have data or instances, and then you will have a set of functions as well. Right. Now, when it comes to this developing classes, in Python, almost everything is it belongs to a particular class. But we can diagram notation, we can represent as like this. Now, for example, what you see here is you have a square shape here with class name, credit card, and any variables, the data that you want to have it, and methods, you perform some actions. Right. So class diagram is actually representing class. If you remember, integers are classes in Python. Floating points are classes in Python. Right? Right. So the three parts, the name, the instance variable, and the methods. Think about these three. Some more examples. Now, person can be described using the data it holds and any other methods. Now, for example, person, we can have name, address, age, and so on. Then as an object, you can have methods, walking, talking, breathing, running, and so on. Similarly, if you take email account, and we know that we want to have what? Right? Recipient list, subject, body, these are inputs. Right? The methods, you can use attachments and also the sending methods. So if you take a car, it has year, model, mileage, these are data members. Then you can perform some actions like accelerate, brake, and so on. These are methods. So you see, anything that we see outside, if you keep track, we can use object orientation. Right. Okay, let's look at this figure. Now the class is like a template, like a blueprint, or like something that is actually useful for you. And then using this class, you are going to create objects. So you can think class as a very generalized one, but after time takes, you will understand. So then, to build up a person, we need to train something. We need to train to do a few things. Right? Now, to do that, we have what we call, constructor. So you take the class, using that, you create the constructor, and what they want to do is, here we will have multiple cars with different properties. So although you use the same pattern or the class, the objects can have different patience. Right. So now we got the basic idea. Right. So let's see how to create classes in here. Right. Now to do that, we have to use what we call self-identify. Now it's like this. Now sometimes these operating systems interact the other. right? So in this particular case, self is actually identified as a key role in the previous one. Right. Okay, so self always indicates that you apply this, right? Or a same object accessing the data. Okay, now having said that, let's look at an example. The example is a student class diagram. We have three parts: a student, that is name of the class. Then these are the attributes. We have only one attribute, and these are the attitudes. Right. Let me type with you. So let me take a new window. Right. Now first one is the class. So in Python you always say class and a class name. So in my case I'm going to say student, which means I'm going to create a student objects. Now the first thing is the very first one, we call this as a constructor, because everything is depend on them. So we can say underscore underscore init, initialization, that's a term. And then you say self. Okay, the first parameter is always self, which is useful. And then whatever the things that you need to create that object, so let's assume that I'm going to get students' names, and then I'm going to save in these, right? So during that, what you do, you change the local variable, right, like this. Right, so if you say run module, so let me save. We set class. Okay, now that we have created, let me divide the screen into two. Right, so let me run this, run module, so it will run. Now we can create any number of objects. So let's say first student S1. I'm going to say student, and we have to provide student name. So let me say Saman. So that will actually create an object. So if you type S1, you see what is inside. You can say type S1. Right, okay. Now that we have put the constructor, now let's add two more additional functionalities. So for example, we can say def get name. To ask the name, we can use self return. Then the third one, def study self return study. Right, let me run. Right, now let's create couple of student S1, I'm going to say student Kamal. S1 student brackets Kamal. Okay, now we have done. So S1 is an object, and then if you want to access name, you can simply use like this. That's possible. Similarly, if you use other functionalities, they can represent now. For example, in this particular case, now we have created a student called Kamal. So let's get Kamal's number, so we can say S1 dot get name right. Okay, so let's create another one. Okay, let's call study method S1 dot get we have studying, right? It says study. So you see that we learn the basics, but we need to put it properly. A small quiz. Can you write the class code for this one? Right. Try with the car. Come up with an ER diagram. Right. So like in previous case, you have to say, okay, class car. If you are finished, please raise your hands. Let's start together. So let me start a new file. Now the first thing is you define the class. You say class car. And then initialization. So for example, def underscore init. This is a special method where we have to define how do you create a car. Remember, self method is always needed as the first parameter, right? And then when you are creating a car object, what are the things you need? Now remember, previous one we have used name, student name, right? Similarly, we can make use of, let's say, everything like year, model and mileage, right? So then when you are getting this, you have to say, okay, self dot year, we can say equal year, right? Now one thing is, if you are going to confuse this, whatever you are getting, I'm going to change this. We are going to say C year, C model and C mileage. Now these values are coming from outside, and then we will assign it to internal data members. That means year here. So C year means like you are getting from the when you insert in that value. Okay, self dot let's say model, we can say C model. Actually you can use the same name, but to minimize the confusion I put it like this. So then mileage, right, that's all. So this is enough to create a car. So let me save this. Right. Okay, now we have car object. We have defined the class. Now we can create cars. So let's say I'm going to create object name car1 as car. Okay, now you have to provide what is the year. Let me say 2090. What is the model? Let's say CHR. What is the mileage? Let's say 5000. Likewise you can create your first car. So if you say car1, it's an object, right? It's a car object, and you can see the values as well. Car1 dot, for example, year, you can access individual element. Car1 dot model, it says CHR. Car1 dot mileage, it says 5000. Actually I could have put 5000 as a number, but anyway, now, right? Okay, so likewise I can create another car object. Let's say car2. So car, remember that when we want to create a car, we have to provide these three values. Year, like let's say 2018, right? Model, let's say fit, right? And then mileage, let's say 10,000. Okay, we'll put it as a number 10,000, right? Now if you want to access the car2 details, we can get individual values. Car dot year, right? Car2 dot model, car2 dot mileage, right? So that is the basics. If you have understood up to this point, right, you can raise your hands. Okay, and then there are two methods we need to define. So that we have to create def accelerate pass is just a value to say that we have to complete inside def break self pass. Okay, actually you can put a message saying that, okay, if you have like a speed, for example, variable, we can increase speed for some value. But right now, let's say just printing message, I'm going to say, okay, accelerate. Right. Similarly, break also we can say something like, let's say, Right now, if I run it now this time, the reason might be a break. Let me put C. Could be the name. Yes, exactly. The problem is break is a reserved word and I am actually using this. So let me say breaks. I will put S here. Right now let me run. Should work. Yes, without any issue. Now when I create car 1, that is car model with the year 2019, CHR, mileage I said 5000. Now we can say car 1 dot, right, accelerate. It says accelerate. Car 1 dot brakes. It says braking. So I think by now we discuss the basic working behind a classes. So classes can hold not only data, their functions as well. So you can keep all the information inside a class. So whenever you want to access it, you can access everything using calling the car. Right, those who have finished up to this point, you can raise your hands.
මොකද මේ 4 5 10 කියන්නේ 10 වෙනි එකට 30 කියන එකද? ඒක ඇයි ඉතින් එහෙම කරන්නේ?
ඒතර පිළිවෙලට ගත්ත හැකිද? ඉස්සලා 30 කෙනාට තමයි ඉස්සලා.
යාළුත් ඒවානේ. ඒක ඉස්සලා මතුස්සන කෙනා තමයි හොඳටම කියන්නේ.
Okay, about Lahiru, Kalana, Harshana having issues, any issues, any questions you might have? Right. Now let me show you a code. Okay, now let me show you a code for turtle graphics. Now in turtle, if you use this one, remember we use turtle graphics. We actually use turtle screen class or raw turtle or pin, right? These are all classes actually we have used. So let me show you like some of the things inside these classes, so you can actually go through all the classes in Python and see how they have defined, why we have learned classes here to understand how to use them, not to create complex classes, since this is basic Python programming. So if you click turtle, you can go to the original Python code, and there I can show you like some of the classes they have defined, right? Now for example, I can find where we can find class turtle, right? Few classes are started with class turtle screen base, then class turtle graphics error, class turtle screen, and then class turtle, right? So these are like some of the classes that we have used when we are importing turtle. And secondly, like the methods, right? Let's say def, right? Def forward method. Remember, we use this, right? Once we have the turtle object, we create an object earlier like t, and then we set t dot forward, right? T dot forward, right? When you say t dot forward, actually it will use this forward method we define inside the class. So you can see self here as well, self and distance, right? That means it applies to the same object. So when we create, we say, okay, in this case turtle, so you can say t dot forward, t dot position, right? And similarly back and turn right, remember? Okay, def right. So it's there. So the code is actually is here. So simply you can see implementation details, right? So you can likewise, you can now, since you know the basics, you don't need to understand everything, but we have learned a little bit of basics of OOP. You can see how they have actually used in their. So similarly you can go to math. Let me check math. Right, math module. So all the details are, you can see how they have written the details. We can have math, all the functionalities. Then C math is for complex mathematics. So you can see how they have designed these modules, right? And then okay, so I will give you like some more to look at it later on, but for the timing I now assume that so you have the required basis. Right, you can lower the hands now. We'll move to another section. Right, let me disconnect for the time. Right, now so far in our discussion we use idle. But from now onwards, we are going to switch to another IDE, which we call Jupyter Notebooks. Right? Now, Jupyter Notebooks is something called, let me show you. If you go to Jupyter Notebooks, right? So you can visit to this website. Right? Jupyter.org. So these Jupyter Notebook interfaces are quite common nowadays. Actually, the newest version is we call Jupyter Lab, where it will actually support